everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's February 5th, 2025, and I've got a lot to talk about today. We're tracking some major weather events that are about to make a big impact across the United States. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and let's dive into what's going on because there's a lot happening. First up, we're looking at a huge ice storm that's set to hit parts of the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic regions. But that's not all. We've also got severe weather on the horizon, and there's even a chance of isolated tornadoes in the Mid-South. I'll break it all down for you and give you the details you need to stay safe. This is going to be a complicated, multifaceted system, and I'm here to walk you through what you need to know. So let's talk about how this is all coming together. It all starts with the jet stream. This powerful river of air is like a highway in the sky, steering all of our weather systems across the United States. Right now, the jet stream is stretched across the country, and it's bringing a ton of energy with it. We've got an atmospheric river hitting the Pacific Northwest, which is pulling in a lot of moisture from the Pacific Ocean. That moisture is getting pushed up against the mountains, the Cascades and the Sierra Nevadas, and it's causing some serious weather problems. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. This is what's triggering flooding and heavy snow in the West. You can see it clearly on the current hazards map from the National Weather Service. Winter storm warnings are in effect across Montana, Idaho, parts of Washington, Oregon, and California. The Sierra Nevada mountains are going to get a huge amount of snow, and the valleys below are going to get pummeled with rain. We're also expecting some flash floods, and I've got to mention the risk for mudslides and landslides is pretty high as well. All that energy and moisture from the Pacific is going to work its way eastward, and that's when things get really interesting. The jet stream's energy is going to collide with the East Coast, and that's where we could see some pretty significant impacts. But before that happens, there's a smaller system moving ahead of it that we need to talk about, a shortwave trough. Think of this like a little dip in the jet stream that can stir up some trouble. It's like a small disturbance in the atmosphere, but it has the potential to cause some big issues, especially over the next couple of days in the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and Mid-South. Now let's break it down a little further. You've probably noticed lately that temperatures have been warmer than usual. This morning in eastern Kentucky, it was 60 degrees outside, feels more like spring than winter, right? It's crazy. Just last week, we were dealing with some serious cold air, but this warm pattern has been hanging around. But that's about to change. There's cold air pouring down from Canada, and it's getting trapped in the Appalachian Mountains. The result, we're going to see a bit of a temperature battle as warm air pushes northward from the south, while cold air sits stubbornly in place across the Appalachian region. This battle is what's going to set the stage for some really interesting weather, particularly in areas like Virginia, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. As the warm air meets that cold air and we get the shortwave from moving through, the ingredients are in place for a significant icing event. So what does that look like? Let's take a closer look at the forecast. As we move through Wednesday, we're going to see snow and rain moving across the Rockies and the Intermountain West. But the real action is going to start in the Midwest and Ohio Valley, especially by Wednesday evening and Thursday morning. Cities like Chicago, Indianapolis, and Columbus, Ohio are going to start seeing a mix of rain, sleet, and freezing rain. For those of you in these areas, be ready for a glaze of ice on the roads. Even if the rain seems like it's not that bad, the cold air will turn it into ice, and that can make driving extremely dangerous. As we get into Thursday morning, places like Pittsburgh, Hagerstown, and Northern Virginia are going to see heavier icing. This could create some serious travel issues with the potential for power outages, slick roads, and very dangerous driving conditions. We're expecting the worst of the icing to happen in the Appalachian Mountains, particularly the higher elevations. If you're in places like the panhandles of West Virginia and Maryland or Northern Virginia, get ready for some pretty tough conditions. If you're in the pink zone on the ice map, you should definitely be concerned about at least a glaze of ice, which can make driving really dangerous. Black ice is going to be a big problem, especially on bridges and overpasses. And in the darker pink areas, we're looking at the potential for anywhere from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of ice accumulation. That's enough to bring down some tree branches, because power outages and create very hazardous travel conditions. Even if it looks fine on the ground, those elevated surfaces are going to freeze quickly. So be careful when you're driving. The good news is that in the higher elevations, especially in the Appalachian Mountains, we're likely going to see mostly snow rather than ice. Places like northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine are going to get a decent amount of snow. But for the rest of the Northeast, it's mostly going to be rain or a mix of rain and ice. But don't get too comfortable, because this system is still going to bring major impacts. How big of an impact are we talking? Well, it's still a bit too early to give exact totals, but if you're in areas like Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and parts of Maryland and Virginia, you're definitely going to want to keep an eye on this. The ice could cause power outages and make driving dangerous, especially on Thursday morning. You might not even realize how bad the conditions are until it's too late. So please be prepared. Speaking of severe weather, we've also got a marginal risk of severe storms tomorrow, February 5th. This risk stretches all the way from Mississippi up through Middle Tennessee and into southern Kentucky. There's a 2 chance of tornadoes across this area, which is pretty unusual for this time of year. While it's not a huge risk, it's still something you need to pay attention to. Cities like Nashville, Bowling Green, and Memphis could see some storms that have the potential to rotate, which means tornadoes are possible. Let's talk about the radar and how things are going to unfold. All that moisture streaming up from the Pacific is going to meet up with that shortwave trough. And on the surface, that's going to lead to southerly winds pushing up into the system. This creates instability, which sets the stage for storms. As we move into Wednesday afternoon and evening, we could see some strong storms developing. These storms could bring small hail, gusty winds, and possibly even a tornado or two. The storms will extend from places like Howell Rogers Parkway down past Bowling Green and into Nashville, and it could even stretch as far south as Memphis. If you're in these areas, make sure you're staying up to date on the forecast because these storms can escalate quickly. Looking at the upper levels of the atmosphere, we can see rotation. This means that there's a higher chance of storms with the potential to spin, creating the possibility of a tornado. Again, this is not looking like a massive tornado outbreak, but it's still something to watch closely. And once this storm system moves out, we've got another one on the way. Yes, you guessed it. We've got another atmospheric river coming across California and into the Intermountain West. As that energy moves east, it's going to bring another round of snow, ice, and severe weather to the Ohio Valley, especially as we move into the weekend. To head to the weekend, another winter storm is on the way. This one is expected to hit on Saturday into Sunday, and it looks like it could rival the storm happening earlier in the week. This second storm is expected to bring more snow to the upper Midwest, as well as more freezing rain to places like Pennsylvania, southern New York, and Maryland. While the overall track of the storm will be similar to the first one, there are some differences to be aware of, so I'll be keeping an eye on how this storm develops. By Sunday morning, the snow will continue to fall in New England, but it will eventually move out by the afternoon. So while you might think that's the end of it, there's more on the horizon. As we get closer to mid-February, we're likely to see that Arctic blast we've all been talking about. Right now, the European models show that this Arctic air will likely come down into the Northeast. So if you're in that region, be ready for some serious snow and cold temperatures. Mid-February is known for big winter storms, and I really think we're going to see 1 or 2 major storms hit the U.S. in the coming weeks. So make sure you stay prepared. In terms of ice, that storm coming Wednesday into Thursday is expected to bring significant ice accumulation, especially in parts of the Northeast. Areas like Pennsylvania, southern New York, and southern New England could see up to a 1/4 inch of ice, with spots like central Pennsylvania potentially seeing up to a 1/2 inch of ice. That kind of accumulation is enough to cause power outages and really hazardous travel conditions. So definitely stay aware of what's coming your way. While we won't see much snow in the upper Midwest out of this first winter storm, that second storm on the weekend is expected to bring more significant snowfall. So stay tuned for more updates on that. As for the Northeast, expect widespread snow accumulation from the storm on Thursday and Friday, with anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snow in many areas. But that second storm could dump an additional 4 to 8 inches, especially in New England. It's still a bit early to get into the specific details, but things are looking pretty active for the Northeast in the coming days. If you're wondering whether or not we'll see more snow, the European models are showing a high likelihood of snowfall, especially in the Northeast. There's also a chance for snow further south in the Central Plains and Ohio Valley, but it's still a bit uncertain at this point. On top of all this winter weather, there's an insane heat wave building in the Southern Plains and Southeast. Over the next few days, temperatures will soar well above average, with places like Texas, Virginia, and North Carolina expected to hit the 70s, which is a big jump from the typical 50s we usually see this time of year. So if you're in the South, get ready for a few days of summer-like weather. Thursday is likely going to be the hottest day of the week, with record-breaking temperatures stretching from the Southeast all the way into Kentucky. This heat will shift eastward into Florida by Friday, and by the weekend, it will continue moving through the Southeast. But don't get too comfortable, because by early next week, that heat will subside, and we'll be watching for the next big cold blast to come in. In terms of temperatures, the next few days are going to break a ton of records. Today, we're already seeing above average temperatures in places like Texas and the Southeast. Tomorrow, the deep South and Southern Plains will see similar conditions. But Thursday is really going to be the day when we see the most record-breaking highs. Many places will be well into the 70s, and areas like Texas and the Southeast are going to feel more like spring than winter. By the weekend, the heat will shift to Florida, and then by Sunday, it's going to continue pushing eastward. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you found this forecast helpful, be sure to hit that like button below and subscribe if you haven't already. The next few weeks are going to be packed with extreme weather, and I'll be keeping you updated on all the changes. Stay safe and prepared, and I'll catch you in the next video.